Greetings. Do what thou wilt should be the whole of the law. I'm Lexi Eve, and today I'm giving you this second video about the Book of Arbatel. This video will cover many of the 49 aphorisms of the book, enough hopefully to give you a clear understanding of how one is expected to conduct themselves as a magician according to the text. So I went over this text about 7 or 8 years ago for my first time, and then in writing this and the last video scripts, and also getting ready to practice the text for my first time, and actually work with Bethor of the Jupiterian star from the Book of Arbatel, I went through the book a second time with a fine-tooth comb, and I actually wrote 28 pages of handwritten notes in a clean, fresh notebook dedicated just to Arbatel. I hopefully intend to do more workings with Arbatel in the future, so I'll continue to use that notebook. But that just gives you an idea. If you ever plan on using this text, I suggest doing the same thing. Go through the text at least twice, make as many notes on each of the aphorisms as possible, leave space after each aphorism's notes so that you could come back if you need to write more or edit or anything. And I also recommend writing a skeleton key script that you could later write a ritual off of later on, just to give you a clear idea of how to use the text. So this lecture here is just on the aphorisms. I'm not going to cover some aphorisms that I covered in the last one, namely the prayers and stuff. I will go over most of the practical stuff again, but I'm not going to go in depth in some prayers like I did in the last video. Also, I paraphrase a lot of stuff. I just want to give you a good idea of what this text entails. This is not to supplant you actually going through the book yourself if you plan on using it, but it should give you a much clearer idea of how to use the magic of Arbatel. So really quick, before going into the first aphorism, I just want to show an image of what the Bethorian spirit named Skelth turned into as a squiggly line. So you'll see that image on your screen now. So when it appeared first, it was like a tall shadow with indigo light in between the shadows. It was taller than my room, which is about 10 or 11 feet high, and I had to slouch over. Then it turned into an orb of light, as I described in the last video. Then it turned into this squiggly line, almost like an astral electric blue color or indigo, something along those lines. And then it turned back into the orb. So I just wanted to show you an image of that line that it turned into momentarily, to give you an idea, since I didn't post that picture last time. There's also going to be timestamps for each of the septenaries, which is 7 aphorisms. There's 49 in total, so there's 7 aphorisms per septenary. And there are 7 septenaries, obviously, sept. So, the first aphorism. The 49 aphorisms are grouped into 7 septenary with 7 aphorisms apiece. Aphorism 1 begins the first septenary. This outlines the importance of silence. When doing magic, you should not go around telling people when and where you are doing your operations, nor the intention of what you are doing. I've already given a talk on a lecture about silence on this channel, and there's a link in the description below. You should know the difference between what is safe and okay for just anybody to be told, and what is either dangerous without instructions or otherwise just too personal to share. From this first aphorism, there's a quote, "Do not throw pearls before swine," end quote. Be mindful of what oaths you have taken and have to uphold. Understand that keeping silence is a discipline of the body and mind, and trains one to be reflective. It also shows that people in the occult can trust you. If you can't keep your oaths and silent about a trivial verse from, let's say, an initiation ritual, then how can someone trust you with very personal things? Even stuff that by venting, if it got around by you sharing their private stuff that they tell you, it might hurt them or ill affect their livelihood. So by keeping silent about your rituals, your intentions, especially initiation rituals and oaths, it shows that people can trust you. So if you can't keep those trivial verses from a ritual quiet, how can somebody trust you with personal matters from their life? This passage from the first aphorism closes, quote, "Observe this law, and your mind's eye will be open to you for understanding secrets, and you will hear divinely revealed whatever your mind desires. You will also find the angels of God and the spirits more ready and willing in nature to minister to you, as much as any human mind could desire." End quote. So this passage elucidates magic that those who practice today's Hermetic science will be familiar with, that of using magic to open the eye and thus gain perception of the underlying spiritual world that is ever present and always at work. With enough training, a magus can know and perceive all things that their mind ponders upon. This is somewhat aligned with Plato's dualism, namely, of the world we interact with and the unseen world we cannot perceive normally. Further expressed is the idea that by working towards the highest, we become holy, so that the angels and spirits will be ready, willing, and able to assist us, as we are not going to abuse or degrade them. Aphorisms 3-8. Many aphorisms, such as 3-13, are designed to give you a code of conduct, whereby to practice this magic safely. Aphorism 14 finally gives a prayer to be used. Of these, I omit most of what I believe to be obvious and mandatory to know in order to practice magic ethically. I will consider it implied knowledge, as morals and ethics I speak about often and have shared frequently these things in most of my videos on this channel. For myself, I have read all of these aphorisms, and as I've said in my notebook dedicated to my Work of Arbatel, I've transcribed important quotes and paraphrased the rest so that I have notes for how the author intended one to conduct themselves through this operation. I suggest you do the same. Even if you have no intention of practicing this grimoire, it is still useful information nonetheless. Also, I highly recommend you too keep a journal just for Arbatel if you are planning on working on this grimoire. Read every single page and take notes accordingly. It helps to understand the material. I will share that from Aphorism 3, I took the time to research the 9 Greek muses, as the author stated clearly that we should, quote, live for ourselves and the muses, end quote. By this, he may mean what is under their domain, such as science, math, and all of the arts, from painting and writing to music and acting. He may also mean actual scientists, artists, writers, etc., that we should take what they do and consider it deeply and study it and hold it in high regard. In this First Septenary, the author also references Pythagoras, Pygmies, Gnosticism, and what would today be classed better in light of the Hermetic Kabbalah. All of that and more is important knowledge to have when using this system of magic, so it's very complex. You have to know numerology, Hermetics. If you know Kabbalah and if you've been studying Golden Dawn or Thelemic magic, you'll already have a lot of those skills at your disposal. The Second Septenary. To give you an idea of how I went about studying this text, between these first 2 septenary, I already had about 10 pages of handwritten notes. Plus, I wrote this lecture simultaneously and made a script for ritual usage. In this Second Septenary, the author discusses more ways to live by and conduct oneself, the logos of God, classifications of beings, and pygmies, which led me to research them and write quite a bit. In Aphorism 8, Arbatel states, quote, God imposes names on things and distributes from his treasures powers and responsibilities. Thus the characters of the Olympic spirits and names of the stars, their office names, have not power because of the shape of their character or how they are pronounced, but by reason of the power which God or nature have assigned to those names or characters. End quote. In short, God, by word, gives power to all things. The logos actually creates. The first sound in Hindu mythology was Om. It was a spoken word that created the universe. God said, let there be light in the Bible. It was by spoken word that creation happened. Likewise, spirits get their powers by God ordaining it upon them. This system, then, should be a means to use the Olympics as intermediaries between the magician and God. In Aphorism 9, pygmies are mentioned. Also, we are giving an order to all beings. Quote, the highest wisdom is that which is in God, then in spiritual creatures, then in corporeal creatures. Fourthly, that which is in nature and natural things. The rebellious spirits follow these after a long interval, which are reserved to the final judgment. Sixth are the agents of punishments in hell and obedient to God. Seventh, the pygmies hold the lowest place, and those who inhabit the elements and are composed of elements. For indeed, all creation exists for the usefulness of the human race, and for their service, as testified by scripture, reasoning, and experimentation. End quote. So two things. Firstly, the text states outright that it is permissible for Magi to work with all of these classes. But I caution that if you ever do, you must first know all of the ins and outs, the benefits and dangers in working with any spiritual entity. Think of how dangerous it can be to work with some people. Imagine more so how dangerous it could be for an unwary person to work with spirits of any class if they don't know what's required. Also, it says in this passage that we are higher life forms, therefore we are permissible to use any type of other lower life forms. Even spirits, God gives us the power to ordain because we have God in us. So when you use these things, you have to use them respectfully and responsibly. Liber Libre, if you go to Liber 30 by Aleister Crowley and by the Golden Dawn, it says don't abuse the elemental spirits, otherwise you'll attract the lowest ones and they'll end up using you. Also in Duty by Aleister Crowley, which I gave a lecture on this channel, if you deforestation or you hunt down all the animals just for profit motive and you destroy, a whole entire ecosystem and food supply, we're as humans going to suffer as the end result. So you have to be responsible for how you use lower life forms. Yes, you have the right to use them, but you have to use them responsibly, otherwise we're the ones that are going to pay for that. So now secondly, pygmies are the only class of entity that I had never studied prior or worked with to reading this text. And that to me was very interesting, so I made a lengthy research. Here I will share a condensed version of my study. The etymology of pygmies is pygmy, pi, upsilon, gamma, mu, and eta, pygmy. And that the etymology means fist, boxing, distance from elbow to knuckle, so it's like a short distance. Also, there's a fighting aspect to it. They stem from Greek mythology, and in later years, many small in stature aboriginal folk were given the name pygmy. In Homer's Iliad, they are described as at constant war with the birds cranes, so they were undoubtedly small, wee folk, very much like the Anglo-Saxon goblins, trolls, and the like. The pygmies lived in the Nile and River Oceanus, which was a mythological river that encircles the entire world. Oceanus is also a titan if you care to look him up yourself, and I find that whole myth very interesting. Pygmies tend to live underground. The pygmy queen was Garana, but she offended Hera with boasts of superior beauty and was turned into a crane, their mortal enemy. She had a son named Mopsus, whose father appears to have been a human named Nicodemus. The pygmies have classes and orders and hierarchies, even a whole civilization. As you will hear again momentarily, Aratron, the Olympic office or star of Saturn, quote, unites pygmies to people, end quote. I would think not in a sexual union, though perhaps, as you could see Nicodemus perhaps mated with the pygmy queen, so there might be something along those lines. But I would think if you should talk to Aratron, it's more in a way of finding a pygmy willing to work with you and do a service in exchange, probably. But if you're interested in that before committing to such an encounter, I'd probably ask the spirit what's everything you really need to know to have a healthy relationship with the pygmy. Basically, like how not to offend them, what type of offering should you use, are there any ways to greet them or dismiss them. You need to know all of that stuff, so I wouldn't just rush into a relationship with a spiritual class of entity if you don't know too much about it. Do some research first and maybe ask the spirit what's entailed. Aphorism 10 makes it clear that Pythagorean numerology is very important to the magic of Arbatel. So if you're not acquainted with numerology, make a study of the Golden Dawn Hermetics and Crowley's 777 and other Kabbalistic writings, specifically Liber 58. Aphorism 13 goes into the logos of God, that its word and wisdom is responsible for all great things in our civilization, especially as can be seen in Egyptian monuments. The Third Septenary. This septenary is the meat and potato of Arbatel. In this portion, we begin to learn quite a bit about the Olympic spirits, what they can do, and how they operate. In Aphorism 15, we learn the Olympics rule and decide fate, quote, administering accidents of fate inasmuch God agrees and permits, end quote. They teach and affect anything appropriate to their star, one of the 7 planets common in classical astrology. In Aphorisms 16 and 17, about these 7 Olympian spirits, I need to clarify something. We are told the names of their star called, quote, a governor or office, end quote, by the text. The name of the office is not the name of the spirit of that office. Based on the wording of the text surrounding these 7 Olympics, I look at it like this. You need a service. You go to a store that provides a service. You need food. You go to a supermarket. Car parts, an auto shop. Hardware, a Home Depot. It's the same thing here. You need something Saturnian, you go to Aratron. You need political help, Jupiterian, you go to Beethorn. Now, you may go to a store, and by chance, a regional manager or the CEO might just happen to be there that day. Usually, you're going to go and talk to a salesperson on the floor and a cashier at the checkout. Now, unless you're someone really, really important and powerful, it's unlikely that you're going to be received by the president of the company. So it's the same thing here. Depending on how long you've been practicing magic, how powerful your magic is, how dedicated you are to this particular system, will greatly affect what spirit comes to you when summoned. Savvy? My point is, what the text calls a star, I'm going to call the 7 Olympic offices. These offices are not the names of any spirit of said office again, but a name of the office of many spirits who are ruled by a corresponding planet of that office. So these are the 7 Arbatel Olympic stars, offices, and the character with which you will summon your spirits. So I'm going to go over the 7 of them and what they can basically do. So number 1 is Aratron. He's the most powerful. He has 49 provinces connected to Saturn. He controls that which is natural, can turn anything, even animals or plants, into stone. He turns treasure into coal and coal into treasure. He gives familiar with definite power. He teaches alchemy, magic, and healing. He unites pygmies to people. So if you've ever wanted to work with the wee folk, Aratron can probably teach you how to form such a relationship. He can teach you what is required and bring a suitable pygmy to your service or friendship. Just be careful and learn what is required so as not to upset a spirit via ignorance. Aratron can also make one invisible. He makes the infertile fertile and grants longevity. Beethor, he has 42 provinces, so everyone has 7 provinces less than the first one. Beethor, 42 provinces, Jupiter. He comes quickly when called. Whoever is dignified with his character, he will exalt to the greatest dignities. He exposes treasures. He secures the cooperation of aerial spirits. These aerial spirits will transport all things and precious stones from place to place. Also, they will provide medicines which are miraculous in their effects. He gives familiars of the firmament of the heavens. He is able to prolong life up to 700 years, if God permits it to be so. Phaleg, 35 provinces, Mars. He exalts those who call to him to high dignities in military matters. Ak, 28 provinces, Sol. He grants up to 600 years of good health. Note, 6 is the number of Sol, 100 is Kof, the moon. If this is a notion of gematria, and if it holds any bearing regarding these beings, this can be interpreted as Ak grants clarity of mind and knowledge of unconscious realms in the magician. He also grants wisdom, gives most excellent spirits, teaches perfect medicine. He could turn anything into pure gold or precious stones. He gives gold and a pouch that pours out gold. Whoever is dignified with his character will be highly honored by all the rulers of the world. Hagith, or Hagith, 21 provinces, Venus. Whoever is dignified with his character, he makes most beautiful and adorned with attractiveness. He instantly turns copper into gold and back into copper. He gives spirits which serve faithfully to those whom they are devoted. Venus has long corresponded with love and femininity, so I add that to this list. Ophiel, 14 provinces, Mercury. He gives familiar spirits very readily. He teaches all arts, dignifies who has his character. He makes one able to constantly turn Mercury into the Philosopher's Stone. Note, the Olympic spirits rule the world in cycles of 490 years. Right now, Ophiel is ruling until 2390 EV. Fool, 7 provinces, Luna. He changes all metals into silver. He rules all Luna things. Cures edema, dropsy, which is water retention in body tissue. This most commonly occurs in the legs, feet, and arms. Gives spirits of the water, which serve in physical form. Makes one live 300 years. So, these are the spirits. I've left out how many spirits each serve and how many provinces they rule. Those details are truly never really important to me, but the more powerful, the more spirits and provinces, or legions, that serve them. I don't particularly care much for those numbers. Maybe someone listening has a reason why that info is important to them, and I'd be willing to read your thoughts if you comment. After these descriptions, Aphorism 16 also has a portion titled The Most General Teachings of This Secret. It is composed of 7 points I will summarize. Each time you call an office, a spirit is sent, and it may be what you need that requires many spirits to go out and work. If God permits your request, it will be done. Each spirit can only work magic aligned with its star. Ak works magic of gold, making and finding. Be Thor of Jupiter, be that law, governance, healing, etc. A true magus can use any kind of spirit, all creatures God has made, for their magic. The magus works with the blessing of God, so all things obey the word of the magus. Average magi will have a lower spirit than, say, the prince of the office come, and their magic will still work. A bad magician who lacks abilities will throw themselves by accident, quote, into the jaws of mocking demons. The 7 governors are in all elements. They move with the firmaments, and the lower spirits of the station take commands from higher-ranking spirits of the office. Magi's are born, not made. Not everyone is meant to be a magician. A sigil given by a spirit will work, but must be used in the same planetary day and hour as the spirit who gave it. God and the soul both live. Keep your agreements which you make with the spirit, who is a revealer of God. Then everything the spirit promises you will likewise happen. In Aphorism 21, we get 2 prayers, one for invocation of the spirit and one for dismissal. In part 1 of the Arbatel video, I go over a mock ritual, plus I go over my own experiment. But I will add, before using this invocation, of course, you need to open your temple and do the preliminary work. The pentagram and hexagram rituals, purification and consecration, all of those things are good to know how to do prior. Then you will have picked out an Olympic spirit with the nature suited to your needs. You'll have your seal of secrets, which I'll talk about momentarily. At sunrise, on the day connected to the corresponding Olympian planet, observe the sun, and you call on the spirit with the invocation of the spirit that's in Aphorism 21. And when you're done, when the spirit comes, there are several prayers, which I went over in the first video, and then you're going to do the dismissal of the spirit or license to depart. I also recommend making changes to suit your personal needs. So I don't use Jesus or Christ or the Holy Spirit in my invocations. That's what's in the text. So you could change those to something of Tifareth related, Osirian related. Holy Spirit could be many different things, the Ruach or the Neshama. So there's options there, but you have to know how to change it appropriately. So I'm going to do an interlude right now, and I'm just going to make a couple of points. When working with spirits, there are things to consider beforehand. Malicious spirits will always seek a way to trick and entrap you, or else to escape or bind you to unreasonable terms. You must be in control of not only them, but of yourself. For a rash word or sudden agreement can send you down a karmic path that will lead to your downfall. Every time you work with spirits, the formula is that first you invoke the highest, then you call to the spirits. Whatever your spiritual path, you need to be sure that you are living in accords with the tenets, morally and ethically, of your tradition. If you are living foully, it will be used against you. If you are unsure of yourself, the spirits will criticize you and make your mind full of doubts. They will distract you, breaking your concentration and link to the highest. But this is a system of benevolent spirits, you might say. According to the text, the author says that when you call on good spirits, the bad ones are also attracted. That you should be without sin, or they will inflict punishment upon you. For my own interpretation, I consider these words thusly. A person can only be ill-affected so far as their karma permits. Therefore, curses or malicious spirits can merely speed up one's karma. If you have a ton of negative baggage, that is plenty of fuel to light a fire under you. If you are doing your will, your true will, you are flowing with nature and aligned with the Tao. You are not tacking on karma, good or bad. Therefore, there is nothing that can be used against you. Aside from that which is very difficult for newcomers to magic to achieve, one can also call on God or the light or a particular deity you often work with and ask it for constant protection as you do your workings. But even then, your karma is still working against you, so the effects of protection spells have their limitations. Based on how you conduct yourself in daily life will determine what you bring into your magic circle, and thus what you attract to the circle when you call to spirits. The Fourth Septenary. This septenary is very concerned with the nature of knowledge, wisdom, and secrets, and how to receive such. Same for all the aphorisms, you have to go over these for yourself. I'm only going to go over 24 and 27 in full detail, but I have a quick note on aphorism 25 first. There are 7 passages listed from the Bible, about how to live your life and what goals to attain. In short, trust God, beware of your vices, live rightly, and do your will, which, as I've explained, is one with God's will. Aphorism 24 gives 3 lists of secrets: the greater 7, the medium 7, and the lesser 7 secrets. The greater 7 say that they are the safest to pursue with this magic and will not displease God if you ask the Olympic spirits about or for these things. No such thing is said about the medium or lesser secrets, so take that into account. The medium are somewhat permitted, but the lesser are definitely, you shouldn't be doing that with this type of magic. You're running a real serious risk of hurting yourself and abusing a spirit in the process. So to paraphrase, the 7 greater secrets are: 1. Healing, 2. To prolong life, 3. Obedience of elemental spirits and also pygmies, sagani, nymphs, dryads, and sylphs. A footnote to this part says that some translations omit sagani and others add the fae. Note, salamanders are never mentioned by this text. Don't know why that is, but yeah, the fire spirits are never mentioned in Arbatel. 4. Talk with the visible and invisible with intelligence and to hear anything you please, and, quote, what is prescribed to a spirit and what it grants, end quote. 5. Quote, to be able to govern yourself to the end God has set before you, end quote. I call this being able to do your will and live in liberty as per Liber Oz. 6. To know the macrocosm, which is perfection of the microcosm. 7. To be regenerated, like Enoch. I believe this means to disincarnate into heaven and to come back into your body wholly. Perhaps present-day occult practitioners would agree with that this sounds awfully akin to astral traveling to the supernals and safely returning to their body, but that's up for interpretation. So the medium secrets now. These 7 I've also paraphrased. 1. Alchemy, transmutation of metals. 2. Metallic cure for sicknesses. Thus, this is a type of medicine written about by Paracelsus. Precious stones, or through the use of the philosopher's stone. So cures for sickness through metallic cures, precious stones, or the philosopher's stone. 3. Excel in astronomy and mathematics, and what sounds like engineering and astrology as well. 4. All magic, natural or otherwise. 5. To know all natural prophetic visions. 6. All natural skills, including manual labor and functions of the body. 7. Quote, to recognize the foundation of all arts which are exercised through the angelic nature of mankind, end quote. And lastly are the lesser 7 secrets, and these are harder to paraphrase, so I will quote all of the important parts of each. 1. To energetically make something and acquire wealth. 2. To rise from a humble state to one with dignities and honors and to establish a new family which may be illustrious and accomplish great things. 3. To excel in military matters and to manage great things happily, and to be the leader of leaders, of kings and princes. 4. To be a good head of a household, in the country and city. 5. To be an industrious and fortunate merchant. 6. To be a philosopher, mathematician, and physician. 7. To be a good theologian, biblical scholar, and scholastic, educated in all writers of theology, ancient and modern. So this text outright permits the use of the first two sets, while the lesser secrets are not to be used at all, it says. Even though the theologian one might not be so bad, but on the surface, some of these might seem benign, but ethically and magically, using magic for money is often not healthy. One, you tack on karma, and it's not free. Money, nothing comes free with magic, you're paying for it. And two, using spirituality for mundane means degrades the purpose of spirituality. There are exceptions, such as when you are doing your will and you need money to be able to do that. Then, yes, there are ways that you could justify bringing money to you. But when you do money spells simply to appease the lowest parts of yourself, you're utterly missing the point. In these three lists, there are questions proposed that you ask the spirits, and they give you knowledge. But if you're going to spend your time summoning a spirit, make sure you truly know what you need in life and seek information about how to do that only. If you know that you're supposed to be a doctor, don't waste time asking a spirit how to be a better salesman. No, learn about health and medicine. Also, the best thing to do is to learn about the light, creation, and divinity, even about your own nature and soul. In these, you are totally safe. Aphorism 27, the Seal of Secrets. So this is a very interesting part of the text to me. The Seal of Secrets is a circle that seems like it would have been expounded upon in one or more of the next 8 books that were never published by Arbatel. Again, what we call Arbatel was supposed to be 9 books, but only the first, the Isagoge, the introduction, the one that I'm working on with the 49 aphorisms, was ever published. So with that, we do not know everything the author intended with this magic circle. So I'll give you all of the details. There is a circle in a square. The circle is broken into 4 segments, quarters, by an X that goes from all the corners of the square, making an X through the circle. Each quarter of the circle has 7 parts. Each of these 7 parts has further 4 parts. So in total, the circle has 112 segments, corresponding with 112 secrets, which you can use this magic to discover. Of these secrets, the east corresponds with the greater secrets pertaining to God and its kingdom of heaven. The south corresponds with the medium secrets. The west and north, Peterson, our text translator, claims correspond with the lower secrets. It may be that the original author didn't list a final 4th set of secrets, because they would have been infernal in nature. Besides, only the greater secrets please God for the magician to seek answers from the spirits. The medium are okay-ish to pursue, but the lesser definitely offends God. If there were a final set of 7 evil secrets, they would correspond with Kako magicians, who the author of Arbatel constantly despises, for they practice black magic, which is not lawful under God according to the author. The letter A is in a smaller circle in the center of the large circle, and corresponds with where God resides and emanates out to create the world. B, C, D, and E are written on the corners. Each quarter has a prince in the center who rules with 3 governors on each side, hence the 7 segments. The prince and each governor has 4 secrets, so we have 4 princes and 24 governors. In the east is sought wisdom, south, caretaking and things of business life, job information, etc. The west is strength things, like the lesser secrets laid out. The north is for secrets of a, quote, a more rigid life, end quote. So as you could see by that base description, a more rigid life, it already doesn't sound good compared to the other ones. Using the circle based on what you are asking, you should face that direction. So for the greater secrets, face the east. For the medium secrets, face the south. It seems like any of the Olympic spirits can be sought in any direction, depending on what you are asking them. The best time to do so is at sunrise exact, for only that 1 solar hour, facing the direction necessary. Note, again, that it is only safe to pursue the greater secrets. The text warns it is at your own peril you do otherwise. To use this circle requires absolute faith. You have to know deep down in your soul that magic works, and that the spirit which you need to talk to is going to come. Much like when someone is new to magic and they can't see the astral light. It requires faith to know that it is working when they do magic. What we have in our minds, our thoughts, manifests around us. When we create images in our minds, they form on the astral plane. Just because you cannot yet see them doesn't mean they are not real. What you say and think indeed affects your surroundings. So it's the same here. If you are new to magic and use this art, you may not be able to see the spirit and think what it plants in your mind is your own imagination. I recommend testing whether it is your imagination or not. You may ask the spirit for proof if you hear a voice, or even if you're just hearing thoughts in your mind that seem foreign while you're doing a evocation. Ask it for something that you could not possibly know, but which you could find out. That's one good test. And there are others, and I firmly believe in testing the spirits I talk to make sure it's not my imagination, and also that they're not malevolent. So 27 also states that the Seal of Secrets may be used as a mnemonic device, corresponding the 112 spirits with their offices and the secrets they possess. The text warns not to fall into idolatry, mistaking this symbol as something to be worshipped rather than a device used as a link to God. The aphorism closes, warning that there will always be temptations of evil spirits, which will try to ensnare thee, and you must be vigilant to fight against evil. But know that, quote, crushing the end of the serpent is going to hurt one's heel, end quote. Lastly, quote, but if you try such an undertaking, you must beware of all levity, arrogance, greed, vanity, envy, and impiety, unless you want to die a miserable death, end quote. Well, at least we can not say we were not warned. So lastly on this seal, there are some things that are not answered in this text. I've linked an article which poses some great questions about the Seal of Secrets and shares some amazing thoughts on the matter. For instance, why does each quarter have 28 segments? Is that a reference to the lunar cycle? Is there something special to the author about the number 112? Why is the schematic broken down into segments of 4, 7, 4? Why are the lesser secrets attributed to 2 quarters? Then there's a lot of other questions. So in the introduction to Arbatel by Peterson, he answers a little bit about the Seal of Secrets, but not enough. So I'm linking an article, and in the article you'll also see some of these questions and a lot more information about the Seal of Secrets. Some of it is speculation, some of it is good research. I think after nearly 500 years we have no definite answers, so we may never get any. I think the best surefire way to learn about the Seal of Secrets further is to ask the spirits yourselves, if you're interested to do so. Whatever the case, I think looking at the numbers is interesting and worth a few seconds. So quickly, 112 secrets, 112 equals 2 to the 4th power times 7. 2, as in duality, man and God, the seen and the unseen. 2 to the 4th power, 4 indicates the 4 elements, times 7, and 7 is love in the 7 planets. 112 could also be 1 plus 1 plus 2 equals 4, the tetractys, a stack of 1 point on top of 2 points on top of 3 points on top of 4 points, adding to 10 total points, 10 being the perfect number, a complete cycle, according to Pythagorean numerology. Also 10 is 1 plus 0 equals 1, the divine origin of creation. Lastly, there is 112 as 4 times 7 times 4. This could be the 4-letter name of God, the 7 planets, and the 4 elements. Then I discovered what comes next here. I looked up the words in Hebrew under the number 112, and at first was disappointed, but upon doing a little bit more research, I discovered Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh Elohim, the divine name of Bina, equals 112, and that is certainly something. Considering that Aratron is the head of the Olympic spirits, and his office rules Saturn, Bina is Saturn as well, so the Seal of Secrets could be something like the supernal Bina, the negative space where God resides within all, emanating its creation outwards. That's just speculation based on the numbering. Last of the Septenary, we are instructed duly to read and reread the First Septenary, and to rearrange our lives according to it. Therein it instructs to love and pray / invoke God, call to it in times of ignorance for help, to be stingy with our time, but also to be of service to people and kind to everybody regardless. Shun the mundane things in your life and seek out the spiritual. Resist temptations. When you learn something, make sure it has been rooted in your mind so that you use it, lest our behaviors become permanent parts of ourselves. Let our best behaviors become permanent parts of ourselves. There is more, but those are some parts that I think stand out from the first aphorism. So, yeah, it's definitely worth studying and living. Remember, too, in this Book of Arbatel, we are instructed that by praying to God for what we need, fervently and with absolute faith, God will give us what we ask for, desire, and most importantly, need. So there's a definite basis of bhakti yoga in this system with the highest. That by relying upon deity, all of our needs will be met, so that we need not worry about anything, and thus we are able to devote all of ourselves to performing what is essentially the great work. The Fifth Septenary. This septenary has useful and sometimes practical information. From my notes on these 7 aphorisms, I will paraphrase some highlights. The text says there are both good and bad spirits. The good are attendants of God's word, and the bad are caretakers of the creation. Much like Azazel or the angel of death of Passover, what we call evil spirits still have their God-appointed functions. There are many examples in various texts in all traditions, and it usually seems like even the bad spirits or angels or whatever are doing God's will. Even Satan can only act with God's permission according to the Bible. With magic, you can attain all sorts of earthly things. But above anything, you should use it to attain knowledge of God, its will, and its heavenly kingdom. Again, this is according to the text. I have my own interpretations of what that means. To use it for the mundane has great risks, though to use it to do your will, which the divine has appointed, can be seen as beneficial, even aligned with the Tao, and would not tack on harmful sin or karma. So there are ways to use magic for worldly matters, but you must know yourself and the divine to use it in such a way. You may summon a prince of the seal of secrets using the appropriate character, and can ask it what you wish, or have it carry out a task or perform magic in accordance with its nature. It will either come itself or send one of its spirits to you. Also in this septenary, the human soul is connected with the chosen spirit and the human soul, and magic attracts evil spirits which will try to come and cheat you or take your soul, or as I interpret that, your energy, to use it for themselves or to give it to their offspring. To quote from the same aphorism, quote, "For those who desire worldly things are hard-pressed to escape the snares of Satan," end quote. So here's another warning that magic, especially this magic of Arbatel, should be used for spirituality as opposed to mundane gains. From a Kabbalistic standpoint, if you seek only things of the nefesh, the animal part of the soul, your ego will rule you to your own demise. Things of the nefesh can be used by the adept, but only once they have right-sized their needs and wants and know their life's purpose. The Sixth Septenary. This septenary is somewhat practical, but focuses on philosophy concerning magic and God's nature. Aphorism 36 is about the scientific aspect of the occult. Do one operation at a time and observe the outcome. Strive towards God and information of simple things. Keep your experiments simple and wait to observe your results. Aphorism 37 states that there are always orders, places, and sigils appointed to spirits. And then it describes the kingdoms of darkness, and it goes on to say that spirits of the light always have power over spirits of darkness. Aphorisms 38, 39, and 40 are lists of information. 38 describes magics of light and darkness. Quote, "Thus the first division of magic is twofold. One way is given by God to the creatures of light. The other is simply from God, but given to the creatures of darkness. And the latter is also twofold. First, when the princes of darkness are forced to do good to the creatures through the power of God. The other is towards an evil end, when God punishes the wicked by permitting them to be seduced and betrayed by magic to their ruin." End quote. And then there are more divisions of magic described after this quote, but it is lengthy, and it goes on to describe magical weapons, invocations of light, conversing with various classes of beings, and things like that. Aphorism 39 is geared towards magical training. Quote, "The preparation for learning the art of magic is sevenfold," end quote. So it gives prerequisites that are very useful to the new practitioner. That magic and the mysteries should always be on one's mind, to go deeper into parts of self and explore. That we are born with a predestined will we are supposed to do. That if you can see spirits, or in my opinion the astral light, then it is a sign God has ordained you a magus. This text also says that some people are born for magic and others are not. Also, never reveal the secrets that are revealed to you by spirits. Aphorism 40 has something of interest. It is 7 laws for governing oneself when they perceive spirits. So, to summarize, 1. When you are speaking with a spirit, know it is ordained by God, and the highest is watching all of your thoughts and actions, so have absolute integrity. 2. Here's a prayer, and I've spoken of that in my last experiment. 3. Test the spirits, embrace those that are good, banish or flee from the evil ones. 4. Avoid all superstitions. Implement science into your magic. Keep your head and have no unnecessary fears. 5. Do not worship idols. A statue is not a deity, it is a device to talk to a deity. Worship not the statue, but the God it represents. 6. Quote, avoid the juggler's tricks, end quote. I interpret this as evil magicians and charlatans will always be ready to hurt you. Also, the Maya and flesh is but an illusion meant to stop you from reaching enlightenment. Have no fears, know no sorrow for the impermanent worldly things. 7. Cling to the gifts of God and the Holy Spirit. Basically, learn your nature and embrace what you were born to do. Also, when the highest does give you a gift, feel gratitude and just don't be greedy about things. Lastly, for the Sixth Septenary, in passage 42, as this text posits elsewhere, the aphorism states quite clearly that magics are born, not made. So while anyone can practice magic, only those who are incarnated especially to do magic as their sole vocation will truly attain to the highest degrees capable of magical powers and understanding. So I follow Crowley's definition of magic, so in part I disagree with this. No, not everyone is meant to conjure spirits and work rituals, but magic is change in conformity with one's will. So magic is unavoidable. We're all technically magicians according to Crowley's definition, which I tend to buy into. The Seventh Septenary. Aphorism 43. This one posits free will and mankind's corruptibility. Quote, great is the power of Satan because of the sinfulness of people, end quote. Because of all this, even though evil magi have definite limitations, their power can still be surprisingly great. Aphorism 44. The passage from ordinary to magical life is like the passage from sleep to wake. And though magic is powerful, magi still have to deal with reality. And that reminds me of the koan. Before enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. The difference between the magician and ordinary person is that magi are calculating and act on will, while ordinary people are easily swayed by external things, hardly aware how much fleeting thoughts affect their actions. Aphorism 45. Test your spirits. Discretion to accept and reject is paramount. Worship God in all things. My own opinion on this is to take a course of practice in Bhakti Yoga. Seek divinity in all mundane affairs, and you will be taken care of by your deity. It will provide what you need. Aphorisms 46 and 7, basically very short, do what you say you will do. Your actions affect what type of spirit you will attract. Do your will, and many good spirits will assist you. Aphorism 48, all magic is of the type according to the nature of the spirit revealed to it. So it gives a list of examples, like Islam was received from Gabriel, so it's of the strength of God, Gabriel, the strength of God. So it's a very strong, powerful text. Aiwas gave the Lima, so if you look at the Book of the Law, it reflects Aiwas's nature. And it says Hermes' magic is of the soul, for instance. And lastly, Aphorism 49. I'm actually going to quote the entirety of it and share a couple of thoughts in between. So, quote, the conclusion of this isagogue, introduction, is the same as said above. There is only one God, and all good comes from him. And there is one sin, namely disobedience to the will and commandments of God, from which all evil arises. End quote. Essentially, do your will and strive ever to what you understand and the highest thing from which creation of the universe has sprung. In the Lima, the word of sin is restriction. So you do your will regardless of external or internal pressures that cause you to fear doing it. Quote, thus the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom and of the beneficial use of all magic. For obedience to the will of God follows the fear of God, and from this follows the presence of God and the Holy Spirit, and the assistance of the sacred angels, and all good things from the inexhaustible treasures of God." End quote. The light and the open eye, the spirit of the magician and the universe, these things are all one and all-seeing. Be your best self. You know your thoughts and actions. Strive ever to remove what does not benefit you and the world around you. Use magic, but understand the outcome of every action you take. When you bind yourself to a specific thing that you have made happen with magic, a path will be set before you, and you will have to walk down that path all the way to its end. So train yourself to be able to see far, so that what you do does not destroy yourself. Quote, "But useless and harmful magic arises out of this. When we lose the fear of God from our hearts, we allow sin to master us. Then quickly the prince of this world, the god of this age, instructs and initiates such people into the service of his kingdom as he discovers useful to his purposes. And as a spider traps a fly which stumbles into its web, so Satan ensnares his prey with a noose of desires, until he is sucked out and dried up, fuel for the eternal flames. He favors and lifts them up to great heights, so that they will fall all the harder in the end." End quote. Do your will. To know your will, discover your nature. To discover your nature, sit deep in meditation, introspection, journaling, seeking to know every part of your body, mind, and soul, and determine exactly what you have incarnated to do, who you are, what your purpose is, and the universe around you. Not just the physical universe, the spiritual seed root of the universe. To use magic for frivolous wants and petty desires is to court disaster. Even worse is to abuse spirits to harm others. You tack on not only your own karma, but the karma you cause them, the spirits, when you bind them to hateful actions. Quote, "Gracious reader, observe with your own eyes and mind the sacred and secular histories, and what happens every day in the universe you see, and you will perceive that the world is full of magi, with their dual sciences, good and evil. In order to show this more clearly, for the conclusion of this isagoge, we have outlined below the divisions and subdivisions of each, so everyone can observe what should be followed and what avoided, and how far one should toil on towards the inappropriate life and terminus of living." End quote. So I actually covered this in the middle of my last video, if you've seen that, where it's a chart, and it's magic of the light and evil magic, and it leads to several things. Good magic is theosophy and knowledge of God and good angels and good spirits. Magic of the light, helpfulness to others, healing. And evil magic is fulfilling those petty desires and wants and abusing spirits to get those things. Even knowledge of poisons was listed. Knowledge and use of poisons was listed under evil magic. So to close, there is much more that can be said about this book, but for a paraphrase and, a 1-hour lecture, I hope that this suffices and gives you an idea of what the text mandates and teaches. I highly suggest going through this text with a fine-tuned comb if you plan on actually using the magic of Arbatel. I found that in practice and philosophy, with just small adjustments, this is really one of the most profound and beautiful books of art that I have ever stumbled across. The thought of anybody evoking and abusing these spirits really gets me upset, as my experience has shown me that they are profoundly gracious and beautiful. So take the warnings in the book seriously. Use magic to know the highest, the divine light, God, Kether, the Ein Sof, whatever you call it. Learn your nature. Discover your will. Just be careful of the temptations that each of us have lurking within us to have more earthly things that you do not actually need. Again, if you bind yourself to something, you buy it and you own it. So when it comes to magic, use it for what you incarnated to do, not merely what you think you want at some given point. Love is the law, love under will. I'll see you on the next one. I'm going to be doing chapter 13 of Magic in Theory and Practice, of the banishings and of the purifications. And following that, I have 2 videos in mind. Stay tuned for. I'm going to give a full Kabbalistic analysis of the Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram. And I'm also looking to do a full interview with my fiance, G. De La Luz on Facebook. He's been a practicing magician of about 30 years, chief of Ayahuasca Temple at the Temple of the Lima in New York. He's the founder of the Congregation of the Lamp of Invisible Light. He's been instrumental in the path of magic for so many people. So he's a good service-oriented magician, and definitely a magician of the light. So stay tuned for all of those videos coming up in just the next week or two. Cheers.